Vayner community. Today is a beautiful Wednesday, and we are so excited to be kicking off the second episode of Day Trading Attention Academy, our little book series where we cover each little chapter by chapter what happens in day trading attention and why you marketers need to know all about it. So today I'm joined by Raghav and by Peter, two incredible leaders in the Vayner marketing organization. Raghav actually is the collaborator on the book Day Trading Attention. So aggregating all of the incredible stories and anecdotes that Gary talks about in the book, Raghav had a heavy hand, literally, and all of that. So Raghav, we're pumped to have you.
Excited to be here.
And PC, a staple in the Vayner community. Peter leads our platforms, algorithms, and culture team across the globe. So both of these guys, you're going to notice a trend, but both of these two guys got a shout out in the first page, the acknowledgement section from Gary. Raghav was actually the first shout out. So big shout out to Raghav, the Day Trading Attention writer and director of product excellence, with a way with words, in a way to sort of synthesize all of the incredible thoughts in Gary's head, plus Peter, who has such a wealth of knowledge. So Dio and I kicked off last week on kind of chapters 1 and 2. You all will be taking our community through the next chapters 3 and 4 of Day Trading Attention. I cannot wait. Everyone get out your pens and pencils and notebooks. And if you are paying close attention after this, there will be a giveaway. So Raghav and Peter, thank you guys for taking the time.
Awesome. Can't wait. It's going to be good.
What an honor. What an honor to share the stage with you, Rag. But before that, what an honor to be sandwiched between Marcus and John Morgenstern. My name was in between those two dudes, like the heaviest of all hitters. So super cool moment. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a fun process. I remember like we, all of us jammed on the writing process of this book, and I had so many conversations with you and JMO and different people.
Yeah.
So it was like a collaborative like brain dump of the whole Vayner ecosystem. I think these chapters that we're talking through is like the tactical details. I feel like these, like the chapter 3, the core variables part was like the most detailed section, kind of like by design, because I think the punchline here is that people don't really understand the depth and the nuance that it really takes to make good content and advertising on social. Like people don't, we talked about the cohorts and platforms, culture, and all these different details. And there's so much depth and examples in the book. And that's kind of the thought process behind it. And like, maybe you can start by defining how we think about pack. Cause like, that's like the crux of this, the detailed section here. So like, I guess like, how do we think about pack overall? And what's the importance of it when it comes to advertising?
One, by the way, I've just learned so much from you, Rob. So it's cool again to do this. I think it's symbolic. The book's purpose, in my opinion, is represented even today based on how much things have changed, and not like fundamentally, because the book still scales, and I think it'll continue to scale for the next many years. But like pack is a core fundamental principle that we have. At the time, we called it platforms and culture. And platforms would be, for example, reposts just came out. Algorithms would be, you've got to be making content for non-followers because sends per views continue to be the leading indicator of what gives you the most amount of reach. Cultural moments become things like conversations that might be popping off, whether it's my 5 to 9 or having the courage to, actually that's Coach's tagline, but exercising free will or propaganda won't fall for. Like those are things. But the point is now we've changed the A from and to algorithm. And the algorithm has now become less of this woo-woo thing versus a very tangible thing. You can optimize everything you make to work in concert with the algorithm to maximize distribution. So I think that's become a shift even in this year, right? Like Gary started the year being like, the A is no longer and, the A is algorithm. And when you see Adam Mosseri go every week and do an AMA, and I'm eating all that stuff up, right? And I know you are as well, because those are ephemeral things. In 24 hours, you either got the alpha or you didn't. And now you see all these content creators that are literally just like re-architecting and reposting what Adam said, and like they're gaining all these followers. But the point is, as Gary says, the answers to the quiz are right in front of our face. It's like, who has the humility and the grit and the time and energy to be able to grab these things and implement them to generate more content. But packing becomes a really core fundamental thing. The one other build that I would add is, and in our last conversation, some of you may have heard, is this idea of like, we all live in this non-follower era, right? Which is, we have to make content for people that don't follow us, and the energy around recommendation engine and discovery, even just the iPad app that just launched now defaults to Reels versus your followers, or a blend, because they want you to just discover more and more content. But the push there means who you can reach and the nuances and depths of everyone's preferences and weird hobbies now all have a community. It's harder to find like Reddit, where you could just do searches and subreddits, but you start engaging with a handful of posts and like the algorithm starts to steer content like literally within minutes. It's not even like hours or days. It's like becoming more and more robust. And because that's happening, you have to understand the culture. You have to understand the P and pack, because some audiences communicate in a different way than others, right? So it's almost like the combination of the format will give you the ability to reach audiences while understanding the conversations that are happening across all of these nuanced audiences. So slang, all of that stuff is now represented in how you brief the content you're going to make, which makes things really, really hard to some extent. You can't be a lazy creator, but it's now, I think, in some ways more complex than it ever was before, but in some ways easier than ever before. You just got to know where to dig.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed is that like as time goes on, it just gets more and more complicated of the things that we have to focus on. I think like last year, there was a big push on the first second of the video, like immediate, and that's still important. But now it's like the first 10 seconds. And then, and it's like, and how are you ending the video, and how, like how are you driving people to the comments at the end, or like, are we, like the conversation we just had now with Team Gary is like, should we use, video tile 1 carousels as the hook, and then tile 2 is the rest of the video. So like, these are all the discussions that, I'm not sure if like I said, with Vayner, we do it. Like I think the broader public, I'm not sure if they understand the depth of that kind of stuff. It's like that, it all comes down to like how you make the piece of content.
Correct.
Right? Like that's like all the strategy and all the things are important, but it's like how you execute those little small details is the entire determinant of what happens in the whole thing.
One of the things I've learned from you and Team Gary V, Sid, Nerea, Mano, the whole crew, big shout out to all of them, is this idea of like reposting, but not reposting with a straight repost. It's like, make a 5% tweak to repost and see the returns of those tweaks and knowing where to go do that, right? So trial reels as an example, being able to tweak the first 3 seconds was the difference between an asset that sat in feed with 5,000 views that became 175,000 views for one of the brands that we work with. And so, just the constant craft of, because the idea didn't work, don't toss it out. Like you can actually edit it with the P and pack in mind, which is the format, the hook. Are you actually driving the behavior that you need from the consumer or the viewer, whether it's a like or a save or a comment or a share? And so that stuff I think has been really, really interesting and important learning for me on my end. And we've seen it kind of pay dividends in a lot of the brands that we work with.
To that point, I'm just like pulling up this, like, this was a repost that we just did yesterday of a classic Gary piece of content. At the very end, if you like right there, like there's like a little low battery pop up. So it's the same piece of content. But like,
are people liking it because they're hitting the close?
Like a bunch of exactly. A lot of the comments are like, "You got me," because like that's because they thought it was like part of the actual phone notification. But like we blended it into the video where it made sense. So like that's to your point. That's like one of the examples. Like you can reuse old things and make small tweaks and have it still work.
By the way, big shout out to Gary V on the call out for AirPods doing live translations 10 years ago, which just got announced yesterday. I saw that post go up earlier today. Hey, quick one for you. So what, if what's something that's popping out in your feed or looking interesting to you that you've seen more recently or seen more effective? Kind of open-ended question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think and this has been fun because like as I get back into Team Gary, it's like, there's so many differences in how I was, they're thinking about it last year versus this year. So it's been interesting to see that. One of these things that we're trying now is this read the first comment. So like
Yes.
so now with Instagram, now that you can pin your own comment, it's like, instead of this post right here, the entire post is just like a short looping video where we incentivize people or ask people to be like, if you're 36 and feel like you're losing in life, read the first comment. That's the entire thing.
Yeah.
We're trying to get them to tap in, and like we're trying different variations of this, and that's been working on Facebook. We just tried it on Instagram. That's been working there. So we're like seeing that on different platforms as like a hack.
Yeah.
That's been a big one recently.
Yeah, he sent a message to a handful of us, and he was like, "The learnings and insights, y'all are on fire." And he was like, "We need to keep it moving, start to incorporate and test some of this stuff."
Yeah.
I'll share one of the things that I've been seeing more and more in my feed is almost like this viral stitch methodology. Have you seen like the Judy's Pancake Woman?
Not sure.
It's so I don't know. Look, this is the thing. I don't know if it's actually going viral. I mean, there's lots of engagement and views versus the algorithm is now feeding me viral stitch method content. So it's effectively companies that are very small that are taking these wild hooks, moments,
I think
and
I know
stitching
what
it
you're talking about.
into, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna find the Judy. So there's like Smashers, burgers, and fries. They've been doing like the hidden camera format where like a burglar comes into the kitchen to try to steal the money, and then they're like grilling the burgers,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the thief starts to grill the burger and eat the burger instead of actually stealing the money. And then this wants and needs brand is this like young guy, super tall, a little aloof, lanky. He's like doing some stuff, and then all of a sudden like drops into the latest fit release. But let me just show you the Judy's pancake. The Judy's pancake shit cracks me up. Hold on, let me just pull it up.
Yeah, that
But
feels
again, this is more over the last couple of weeks I've been seeing it. Hold on.
Yeah, I see that a lot with like small businesses, like local businesses. They do that a lot, right?
Yeah, they do it a lot. Hers is a bit more of like she uses herself as the first part of the stitch, but the Smashers burgers and fries and like the wants and needs are doing pretty good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of those classic, like, I always think about like what are formats that you can easily replicate to, because there's like different ways that we produce good content. Some are just like blind creativity. You can just like have great ideas and have it hit. And there's other stuff that's like more formulaic, and you can kind of like,
Yes.
this plus this equals this, and it'll perform. To me, like that's one of those examples of like a formulaic piece of content that
Yes.
is easily replicatable, for across a lot of different brands and businesses and everything. Like if you have a viral hook that you just copy and you add your own thing at the back of it, it's like more likelihood of working.
Yeah. It's funny, like I'd be curious for your take. My subjective take right now is that more series-based content and more consistent type of content is an angle that's going to drive better performance. So it's a little bit of repeatability. Obviously, you have to keep it original, but instead of this wild kind of shotgun approach of all different types of content to see what hits, it's a little bit of more consistency. And with the Reels linking capability that just came out last week, it feels like a little bit of the platforms pushing people to that way, more storytelling. Curious for your take on that, and what you think.
I think that makes sense. Like it almost like creates inside jokes or creates inside references with the community when they see the same type of content over and over again. Like if they know what to expect, that makes sense to me. And I think there's a conversation there between like larger and smaller accounts too. Like one of the interesting things recently is like, one of the anomalies that we've seen on Gary's account that we haven't seen prior is early, like when he posts a piece of content, like his follower base is so large that he's able to rest on that to some degree. That's how it's historically worked.
Yeah.
Recently, it's been like, okay, there's been certain pieces of content that we thought were going to work because they historically did, but they aren't now because, they're getting more non-follower reach early and like they're kind of stagnating off. So it's like, it's interesting to see like the interest graph world kind of pick up to the larger accounts too and things like that. So I think to your point, the series type of content could work for them too, like larger versus smaller. When it comes to like, one of the things I think that you do well is, like when it comes to platforms, there's like knowing how the platforms work, but then there's also like anticipating what they're going to do next, like what the platform itself and the direction that they are moving. How do you think about that? The second part, like how do you like predict what Facebook is going to do or what Instagram is going to do?
I mean, I don't know if it's predicting as much as you get a little spidey sense. I think everyone gets a little spidey sense. It's just a matter of, I think partially you need thought partners to be able to riff with, like you and Johnny and others in the company, Sid. But I think the other part of it is there's some pattern recognition to some extent. But I think when TikTok, and we're like so front lines on this stuff, right? Like we're talking with CMOs all the time. And I remember Kaylin, Gary, Britt, and I did this probably with like 100 CMOs, like trying to talk about how to unlock TikTok. And like the big observation for me was brands kept pointing to geopolitical things and brand safety. And to me, like the inside scoop of it all was they just don't know how to make content for consumer up type of feeds versus top down brands. And so like we talk about the TikTokification, but once TikTok exploded, from my point of view, I saw that being like a very seminal moment or inflection point where marketing's been completely flipped. And all of these little platform features and adjustments and updates really have, let's be honest, been mimicking what TikTok had launched to begin with, right? So whether it's Instagram converting every video to Reels, trying to get 20% of content consumed in the app to be non-follower based, and this was December of 2023, and everyone had that big backlash to it. And so then that obviously is now closer to 70-ish%. So now we live in this world where everything is truly instantaneously satisfied and the algorithms have to be that robust to win. And just about every platform now has that is meaningfully of scale, has the ability to go viral, right? Like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram in their discovery placements from a video standpoint, all can go viral. And so there's a little bit of like, when is Snap going to optimize Spotlight to be able to go do that? When is LinkedIn going to be able to go do that? When is Reddit going to be able to go do that? And it's not about their ability versus maybe the timing. But if they're not, you've got to ask, it's like, how do you compete in a world where you can go find relevance and that helps you close the gap? You've got to have those product features. So when at least for me, when I saw that play out on the TikTok front, it became okay, everyone's going to try to go and build a little bit of the TikTok machine. And then from that center point, you have platforms that are closer or further away or have their own advantages to being able to do it, right? So like YouTube has historically been living room TV, long form. They launch shorts. They're like the least social of all of the platforms by design because of the incumbency of the organization there. And candidly, they don't have to have 200 billion views a day. So they can be slower to pick up a lot of these social things. But what do? They launch collaborations, like collab features like they do on Instagram. They launch communities and broadcast channels type of capabilities. They're launching stickers and polls. So it's like Instagram has that, TikTok has that, right? So above and beyond just the features, it's almost like the social hooks that are working on one channel make its way over to the other. So being early, I would say like the core DNA of VaynerMedia and all of the VaynerX entities that make content really fueled by Gary and Team Gary V is you just got to make volume and variety. And there's the learnings you get. And as each platform copies a feature that they think would best benefit their platform given user behavior, content that's being consumed, the creator profile, all that stuff, you already have a head start. You know what I mean? It's like, it's hard to start immediately. Well, one, you should start sooner than later. But as you start to do this stuff and you do a feature matrix of platform in columns and rows of all the social features, they're all lighting up now. They all kind of look the same. How the consumer reacts to those features and placements may be different. and formats than how consumers react on other platforms, but that's just part of the learning process. So for me, I think it's when you go centered consumer up, which is now I think all the viral platforms, you go viral because you're centered with consumers. And this is why social at the center is so important. And as you think about campaign life and things of that sort, I think you can, once you get good at one, you can see how all the other platforms are going to release a feature or two, and you've already had reps thinking about how it will work. And then as you spend time in the platform, you get a feel for it.
Yeah.
And like my screen time is like obscenely off the charts, like in an unhealthy way. But like you got to be in apps, right? You got to be in apps to just absorb and consume.
Yeah.
So a little long-winded way of answering the question, but
makes sense.
yeah, you just got to spend time in it.
Yeah. The reps between platforms is like super important to that point. Like I think there's so many times when we just like replicate the same feature or the same CTA or the same thing on one platform versus the other. Once we see them kind of like going, and that's like the pin comment thing is like a very simple example, like the read the first comment thing. Like once Instagram had the capability of being able to do that, like we just took that from Facebook and put that on Instagram. So that dynamic happens all the time.
Yeah. I think you got to design creative for context as well, right? So it's like the same video lo-fi may perform on TikTok, but may perform less on Instagram just because of how some of the content is evolving. Mm-hmm. Behind the scenes content on Snap of the same shoot may perform much better than the hi-fi version of that same piece of content. So to your point, it's just you got to know the nuances of the platforms that way to be able to do it. And I think the other element is like the platforms we work with have been amazing partners. I think they're going through this discovery journey on their end as well. And it's been cool to get close to a lot of the PMMs across platforms and feed into some of their roadmaps. But I think for us, we've never been closer with them strategically in our point of view and where they're trying to go and build. So that's been a fun part of the process as well.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I've learned from both yourself and like the strategists broadly at Vayner is the cultural side of things. Like what's fascinating to me is using TikTok search and using the search capabilities on platforms to understand what's happening within specific subcultures and it's like very specific niches. Do you have any advice or tips on like how do you identify or search terms or how do you get in the heads of these demos?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity, I think, for us and for everybody that's tuning in. We started this thing several years ago called burner accounts. This isn't like Katie's burner that gets exposed where you're kind of blowing up conversations in any which way you want, but burner accounts to help manufacture a input to platforms where they think you care about certain subjects or topics or audiences, so that when they suggest or recommend videos to you, you get what's most popular in that category, right? So a good example of this, and by the way, burner accounts are also evolving quite a bit, but you effectively want to follow a mix of 20, you can think of it as 25, 25, 25 as a very basic way to think about it, which is like, hey, if I'm in the category of padel versus pickleball, I might create two burner accounts because the audience has been very, very different. But what are the top 10 accounts on padel that I'll follow versus the 10 or 25 accounts on pickleball? Then I start to go into like the publishers, the influencers, and the creators that are very specific about padel versus pickleball. And then you follow where you think the cohort or the audience that's trying to be met by both of those audiences, 25 celebrities, musicians, etc., right? And then over the course of the next, what used to be like, you at first you didn't have to do anything. Now you got to like actively engage. So like the two tips would be like, once you shell those that account up and you follow them, you have to engage with all the content that's very specific to what you're looking for. Because the recommendation engine will start to feed you random pieces of content in the beginning because it has no history or foundation of the things you care about. So you can't just like set it and forget. You got to engage, do some more searches about the sport or the nuance of the things you discover. And then what starts to happen is the suggested reels on Instagram or the FYP on TikTok starts to transform. and it will now say, okay, you care deeply about pickleball and the audience of pickleball. This is what's happening. And it could be viral videos, it could be memes, it could be conversations, it could be any number of those things. That's been the best way for us to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of the audiences that we're trying to reach. Because again, we all have to make content for people that don't follow you. So you have to make the most relevant content. So if the starting point is, if what you're making, is it or is it not relevant to pickleball audiences? Yes, no, how are you defining it? Burner accounts give you the ability to make a better answer or have a better call on those things. The last thing I would add is don't ever in the burner accounts use a search bar to check like the score of the game the other night for a completely different sport, because it'll like totally fuck you up. Like you've got to stay rooted in the category is what we're seeing, because burners are getting harder and harder to pull off. But hopefully with AI and Instagram indexing and SEO and some of these kind of MCPs and all that stuff on the AI front, it'll start to help us kind of dig better. But right now, burner accounts help us try to understand what's the most relevant thing in an audience or category.
I love that. That's awesome.
I think we're pushing up on time, right, Rod?
We have like a minute
You
left.
I got one for you. What kind of, not call it tier 2 platform because that doesn't feel fair, but what platform outside of Instagram, Google if proper, Meta proper, and TikTok are you most interested in or intrigued by?
I always love Reddit. Reddit is always like from a research standpoint, to me, that's like when I think about, what subreddits are growing and how to get in the heads of the people. There's the burner accounts and learning the formats that they consume in and the language and the lingo. The Reddit is like, I always try to look at forums of, different people. And I've been fascinated by this because like, it's like a new thing for me, which is like understanding why certain things are happening, why this like old money's fashion style is coming. But like, I'm fascinated by that now. And I've been looking at these like Reddit pages and Reddit forums and stuff to like really try to understand that and be more like, the people that really understand these things that are coming up. I think Reddit's a good place to do that.
I agree, man. I agree. Reddit for me is like super untapped.
Yeah.
It's like 40+% of what's feeding all these answer engines, like LLMs and stuff like that, as well as in terms of credibility and trust factors. But
yeah,
because you said Reddit, I'll take another one just to wrap it up. And I think Snap still has an insane amount of potential for a couple of reasons. One, like some of the MAUs are up. Obviously, there's a little bit of like slowdown on consumer adoption and acquisition numbers on that front. But when 40% of their audience is not on TikTok and Instagram, I'm like, forget everything else with DR and trying to go toe to toe with every other platform. Like bringing that to life, I feel like is such a massive opportunity. And in this world, like we're having this session, Rob, because people don't understand the nuances and how to post differently between TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, let alone every other platform. So if they're doing it for those three, like Reddit, Snap, Pinterest, everyone else feels a little disenfranchised. Mm-hmm. But if they actually like went deep on Snap, 40% plus are not on TikTok and Instagram. Like that to me is the wildest audience stat. To me, it also feels like the most amount of potential upside in some regards. So for me, I'd just be very curious to see how they action on that potentially if they do.
Yeah.
If not, Snap team, maybe you will.
It's different. Yeah. There's like a real different audience almost. It's like really a different format, whole different language of speaking.
Exactly. And yeah, that's why like when they launched their AI like messenger bot in Snap, I felt like that was such a big, and that was a couple of years ago. My AI, I think they called it. It was like they had the opportunity to create the LLM for that audience. And I feel like that could have been Siri for like boomers like us. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
And it's just like, man, it's just like those things because the audience is so unique. Like they're so glued to it. We just don't understand it. CMOs don't understand them, So it's like, to me, there's like a lot to unpack there as potential upside.
I love that. Yeah, as a content platform, makes sense.
Last one, Ron, can you, for everyone that's in the audience, We'll pick a couple of random people, and Rog is going to sign this book.
Let's do it.
And we're going to mail it to. Actually, we'll do two. Rog will sign both of his books. Maybe we get Gary to pen it as well.
I'll sign
give him out to a couple.
I'll sign whatever PC wants. I'll sign everything.
Oh man, this is awesome. This is fun.
All right, good stuff, man. Really good talking to you, and hope everyone enjoyed. It was good talking to all of you.
All right.